Welcome to the first episode in a series that aims to explore all things Aussie football in the lead up to the World Cup in Qatar later this year. Over 100 Australian men and women are playing and coaching professional football overseas. We want to know where are they playing, how are they developing and contributing to their teams, and are they in the mix for any of our national teams? All with a view to giving you everything you need to know about our players as well as our chances coming into the World Cup. Australia has an uphill battle to qualify, with a remaining regional qualifier and a trip to South America for a battle with the continent's fifth place side. In what was a positive start to the qualification campaign, a few bumps turned into some potholes, and now we find ourselves with an uphill task to qualify. And while the bar is low when it comes to football in Australia, qualification is now considered a minimum. So with that at risk, let's start the football conversation on a more positive note. And there is none more positive than perhaps Australia's greatest ever coaching export, previous Australian national team coach and current Celtic manager, Ange Postecoglou, affectionately known as Big Ange. Ange is the benchmark for Aussie coaches, becoming the first Aussie to coach a team in a major European men's league. He is known for his attacking philosophy and his trophies in Australia and Japan. But what sets him apart from the good and the great managers is his man management style and his clear vision of how he wants his teams to play. Players have publicly stated they would run through brick walls for him. One player taking that further at the team hotel when he stated he was ready to 2-foot tackle the nearest waiter after Ange's pre-game speech. And since arriving at Celtic, he has also demonstrated a distinct understanding of the fans, and already seems to have earned their admiration and respect. If you believe some of the fan forums, if he ever needs a kidney or a liver, he has a list of potential donors. And if he wins the title this year, expect a few newborn Glaswegians to be named Ange. As a player, Ange won 2 National Soccer League titles with South Melbourne. The National Soccer League was the old format prior to the inception of the A-League in 2005. His manager at South Melbourne was Ange Postecoglou. For those that don't know who that is, or weren't around when black and white TV was a thing, he played in the 1950s and 60s in his homeland of Hungary, and also for Real Madrid in Spain. Playing as a forward, he is one of the early examples of an attacking maestro. He scored over 700 goals, and that places him 5th on the all-time scorers list. Ahead of him on the list are some more current names our younger viewers will know: Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, as well as a few classy Brazilians in Pelé, arguably the world's all-time greatest player, and Romario, a World Cup hero with Brazil. Postecoglou as a coach was similar to how he was as a player, aggressive and attack-minded, and this suited Ange just fine. Ange was a fullback capable of playing on either flank. However, he always wanted to play further forward, especially in the system that Postecoglou played. This was likely due to the attacking philosophy of the team under Postecoglou. Wingers stayed high and didn't support the fullbacks in the defensive aspects of the game, and this is fun to watch for fans and wingers, as they would be high up the pitch and ready to counter-attack, but a nightmare for Ange in a fullback role, as he was regularly isolated and outnumbered. One has to think about what that style of play, and Postecoglou's influence, had on Ange as he became a coach himself. Evidence of how his playing experience has impacted his coaching style can be seen in how he uses his wingbacks. At Celtic, they are now used in central midfield areas to support ball progression, and there is a lot more underlapping of wingbacks in this system, which is not exactly the norm in world football at the moment, and he does this as it allows his teams the ability to achieve one of their key principles, which is possession in good areas. If Postecoglou is where he got his professional tactical certificate, he was learning his style craft years earlier. Ange's father immigrated his family to Australia from Greece in the 1970s, and he was a hard-working man with a passion for attacking football. In Ange's short time with the club, you can see the respect he's been able to garner from Celtic fans. Fans that were initially fumbling over his last name and asking Postecoglou who, turned from initial despair into renewed positivity. After a first game stumble against Hearts, early big wins and a style of play had fans getting excited. But more telling was how Ange managed the initial media barrage and endeared himself to the fans with his honest and informative approach to good questions and his utter indifference to bad questions, of which he had hundreds to deal with in the first few months of his tenure. He can now boast widespread support for the team, his brand of football, and importantly, belief in him and his approach. Before arriving on European shores, Ange had built a very handy CV of success as a manager. Landing at Celtic, for Australians at least, was a well overdue move to the big time for a coach that, had he had a different passport, would have been in Europe long ago. Australian fans knew what he was capable of and showed a lot of excitement when he was appointed, and Scottish football fans are starting to understand what their Aussie cousins have known for a while now. Perhaps that national recognition all starts back in 2009 when he took a struggling Brisbane Roar, cleared house to build a team in his own image and style, and would go on to win consecutive titles in 10-11 and 11-12 seasons, breaking an Australian sporting record for most games undefeated along the way. All of this on a tiny budget in a salary-capped league. This Roar team took the A-League by storm and shaped the way the league played. It was quick, vertical, aggressive and absolutely relentless. It became must-watch football. Aussie football fans in a congested sporting landscape started to think maybe there was enough technical ability in the Australian League to play an attractive brand of football. It wasn't long before fans stopped sarcastically chanting, "It's just like watching Brazil," every time the Roar lost the ball, to declaring the team Roar Salona in homage to Barcelona and talking with their feet by filling the stands. For the most part, Ange has set his teams up in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Primary difference in the setup is the number of pivots or holding midfielders in the system. Both systems encourage fullbacks to contribute going forward. In the past, this was through stretching the play and overlapping wingers in wide areas, but as I mentioned earlier, this has since evolved to include fullbacks occupying central areas and build-up play to support the midfield in progressing the ball. This creates midfield overloads and achieves one of Ange's key principles of midfield dominance. Goalkeepers and defenders are expected to play out from the back, not sometimes but all the time. Midfielders and forwards are expected to be proactive in their movement on and off the ball to facilitate quick ball movement. A few other principles of an Ange team are attacking vertically and in behind with a focus on wide areas. That creates 1v1s and allows the wide players to distribute into the box for a high percentage finishing opportunity. In defence, it is a coordinated high pressing game to win the ball back in attacking areas, and this is done by using a high defensive line to congest the space. This is a very physically demanding brand of football. It takes very fit players, but potentially more challenging is finding the right pieces to play this brand of football. Not all wingers and strikers have the necessary work rate to play in an Ange team, and not all wingbacks can offer something in central areas. But a quick look at Ange's record and you will see that once he has the players he needs and the players at the right fitness levels, trophies will come. His success at Brisbane Roar meant he left after his second full season to return home for a new challenge with Melbourne Victory. He wasn't there long before the Australian national team came calling. After two successive 6-0 slappings at the hands of quality opposition in France and Brazil, Holger Ossie was removed from his post, and in October 2013, Ange was installed as the new Australian manager. Coaching only one game in 2013, Ange was able to shape his squad in 2014 in preparation for the World Cup taking place in Brazil. Able to call on 4 experienced players from the Aussie Golden generation that featured in the 2006 World Cup, in captain Mele Jedinak, Mark Bresciano, Tim Cahill and Mark Milligan, he had an experienced core group of players. In a World Cup year, competition was scheduled deliberately stiff, and from a scoreboard perspective, which is usually all that matters, the team didn't have too much to show from the toil, winning just one game all year in the lead up to the Cup, which was a friendly versus Saudi Arabia. The World Cup itself didn't go much better, losing all 3 matches to exit at the group stage. Heavy losses to Chile and Spain were somewhat counterbalanced by an admirable 3-2 defeat to the Dutch, that did include a Tim Cahill worldie that was considered for best goal of the tournament. Despite the disappointment of an early exit, there was a sense amongst Aussie fans, or at least this balding one, that Australia could feel a sense of pride about how their team went about the campaign and the brand they tried to play against superior opposition. The standard Australian sporting traits were keenly on display: fitness, physicality, teamwork and camaraderie, but also on display was a style of play not seen by fans of the Australian national team, and a sense of optimism that a trophy might be around the corner in 2015. The Asian Cup was on home soil, and maybe Australia might be able to secure its first major men's football trophy. By 2015, Ange's methods and expectations were better understood, and for the most part he had a settled squad. Australia went into the tournament amongst the favourites, and they didn't disappoint. A minor hiccup in a 1-0 loss to South Korea in the group stage was rectified when it mattered most, as the team beat the same opponents in the final 2-1 to get a hold of their first piece of major silverware. Australia had won at the 3rd attempt. This would turn out to be the peak of Ange's time at the helm of the national team, and is likely to remain the peak of Australian men's football for some time. The team continued to evolve over the next 2 years, and the emergence of Aaron Moy and Tom Rogic as first team regulars gave hope of enough creativity in the team to compete. But as time went on, and with Ange looking to evolve the system and remain competitive, he started to receive some backlash from the Australian football media. To me, it seemed like the media were no longer on the football journey with Ange and the style of football he wanted to play. Calls for a more pragmatic approach did not align with how Ange saw his team playing, and as he has said a few times since arriving at Celtic, he wasn't going to change his approach to the game. He also seemed disappointed with an Australian football apparatus that didn't back itself to be better, and in my opinion, he had us on the right path to being a better footballing nation. But sadly, these calls also seemed to seep into the boardrooms of Football Australia, and the writing on the wall was being written. The discontent seemed to align to a tactical shift to a back three, and it started to become clear Ange wouldn't be in his post for much longer. For most of 2017, Ange battled the media about the team's approach, but wanting to ensure qualification, but also clearly exhausted with the lack of support, Ange resigned his role as national team coach after successfully guiding Australia into the 2018 World Cup. He had been in his role for 4 years. Ange wasn't out of work for long though. Yokohama F. Marinos signed him to the club to compete in the Japanese First Division. Yokohama are partly owned by City Football Group, who have built a nice stable of clubs around the world, which includes Manchester City in England, New York City in the United States, and Melbourne City in Australia. Yokohama didn't have a recent history of success, but had been in the conversation for the title over the last decade. Japanese players have become renowned for their technical ability and doing the fundamentals well. And the team was made up of local homegrown Japanese players, with a sprinkling of Brazilian flair. Looking at his career to date, he had become known as a coach that had a system that took time to develop and for players to settle into. Whether that is accurate or not, the challenge would have been made harder with the two-way language barrier. But no doubt this made him a better coach in finding new and improved ways to be direct in his coaching style. And after enduring a few rough patches in his first season and finishing mid-table, his second season saw Yokohama lift the title. They played attractive football and tightened up defensively, which was one of the key issues from season 1. In doing so, Ange had found a way to unseat consistent Japanese title contenders, Kawasaki Frontale. Season 3 in 2020 saw the onset of COVID and crowd restrictions. Yokohama's performances dipped a little in Season 3 as a result, and another mid-table finish was in the offing. By 2021, the team were back in the top few places and competing for the title. Then, somewhat unexpectedly for most, in June 2021, which is the European off-season, he was signed to Celtic on a 1-year deal. Now in the final weeks of Ange's first season in charge, he has a chance to do something no one expected, and that's win the league. Fans and media alike have spoke of a rebuilding season, and there was a sense that the bar was low for Ange at the start. Just don't get hammered by our rivals was the vibe. But Celtic are now first in the league, with a 6-point advantage, already having one title in the bag. If they can continue to form and win the league, Celtic will have an unlikely double. The treble was on offer until a semi-final loss to Rangers recently took some of the gloss off the season's accomplishments, but this is all from a manager they hadn't heard of and were initially sceptical of. Ange's season accomplishments, even if they stay at what they are now of one cup trophy, would be considered a success for a squad that made over 15 changes to the team and wholesale changes to the starting lineup. Only newly appointed captain Callum McGregor, fullbacks Greg Taylor and midfielders Tom Rogic, David Turnbull and James Forrest are members of last season's squad that have regularly featured this year. Ange has also been given plaudits for his work in the transfer market, with shrewd acquisitions from his old stomping ground in Japan proving instant hits. Kyogo Furuhashi, before suffering injury, had set the league alight and provided both goals in the cup final on what turned out to be one leg. Hatate and Maeda have come in and done the business early, and Inaguchi has had little opportunity but looked comfortable when given minutes. His European signings have all turned out well to a man. Joe Hyde in goal has been a rock and a mainstay at the back, and no doubt a hugely positive influence in the dressing room. Cameron Carter-Vickers, or Carpet Slippers as I've seen him called on the fan forums, has been fantastic at the back and formed a solid defensive partnership with fellow newcomer Carl Starfelt. Josip Juranovic has come into the right back position and excelled. Almost every player could get listed that has come in. Jota and Abada in the wide attacking areas have both had their moments of brilliance, and the big Greek Giakoumakis has a high work rate for a big man and provides something a little different to the Celtic forward arsenal. The season will go down to the wire. Rangers are a good team and capable of causing Celtic trouble on their day, but Celtic do have the advantage in the remaining Glasgow derby. Regardless, it will be a nervy affair for both teams for every match until the season is over, but particularly for Rangers as one slip up and it could be decided in Celtic's favour. So for those that are invested and don't want to go grey, grab your Just for Men bottle now in preparation. It has been a whirlwind first season for Ange. Celtic have found a lot of new Australian supporters, and Japanese ones too, which will only add to their global brand. And Celtic seem to have cottoned on to this pretty quickly, with an Australian pre-season tour planned. What was interesting about the announcement was that Rangers had been invited to tour and also play a match against Celtic, an offer which they have since rejected after fan backlash.
Still hate you.
The Glasgow Derby is one of the most fiercely contested derbies in the world, and I guess there's just no time and space for the word friendly anywhere near the Glasgow Derby. Our leading Aussie coach is fast moving into the centre of the world football shop window. I hope to see him achieve his goals this year and make a European tilt with Celtic in the years to come, before making his way to the Premier League for a new challenge. It is not often fans change clubs for a player, let alone a manager, but that is exactly what I have done, and I would wager a lot of other Aussies have done also, quickly hitching ourselves to the Ange bandwagon that is destined to be trophy-laden. Our next episode is staying in Scotland. We want to take a look at the league, the other Aussies competing in the competition, how they are contributing to their teams, and if any of our Scot-based Aussies are in the mix for the World Cup squad. We will pay particular attention to one who is a key part of Ange's Celtic team and Graham Arnold's Australia squad. Hope you enjoyed our first look at Aussie football overseas. If you want to keep a track of us as we follow our Aussie players and coaches in the lead up to the World Cup, please like and subscribe.